A black undercover police officer was basically beaten up by his own colleagues during a Black Lives Matter protest in 2017. Now, he went undercover and so did another white police officer from the same department. And the outcome of this story gives you a sense of how profiling and prejudice really works. On September 17th, 2017, Detective Luther Hall was working undercover during a protest for Anthony Lamar Smith, a black man who was shot 5 times by cops in 2011. Hall, who was dressed in plain clothes, was mistaken for a protester by his fellow policemen. And so he was not only arrested, his cell phone was destroyed. They took the chip out of the cell phone and they proceeded to beat him to the point where prosecutors got involved in this case. And now there are some consequences for the officers who played a role in his beating. So here are some photos from the prosecutor's exhibit in the case, and it shows you how Hall was beaten. His lip is busted. You can see some of the wounds on his body. Hall was documenting the protest with a camera, and that's when he was detained and beaten, had his cell phone destroyed, and was finally arrested by fellow members of the St. Louis Police Department. Hall immediately underwent multiple surgeries following the attack by his coworkers and still suffers from permanent neck damage. Now, since the victim was a cop, there were actually some consequences for the cops who beat him. For instance, Dustin Boone, a former cop with the St. Louis Police Department, was found guilty Thursday of depriving his injured fellow officer, Detective Luther Hall, of his civil rights. The deprivation of rights under color of law is a felony civil rights charge and could put the ex-cop behind bars for up to 10 years. Boone also, by the way, has a history of violence against protesters and racism. In 2017, he allegedly slapped a case suspect in the face and sent officers texts joking about it, saying the suspect, quote, got his eyes widened with a little slap from a white boy, LOL. And there were 2 other former cops who have actually pleaded in this case. The 2 former cops with the department, Randy Hayes and Bailey Coletta, both also pleaded guilty to the beating earlier this year, and Hall has received a $5 million settlement. But notice that there was a white undercover cop who did not face the same, experience.
No, I actually thought that was probably the most interesting part of the story. They both go undercover, and when the cops see a white protester, what they think is a white protester and a black protester, they let the white protester go completely. They don't do anything to him. The black protester, they kicked the living crap out of. He started FaceTiming, the cop who was doing the beating started FaceTiming with his girlfriend, told her ahead of time. He was looking forward to it. Now, it turns out he wasn't looking forward to beating up protesters in general. He was looking forward to beating up black protesters, okay? And so now this second part of the story is if he wasn't recording it himself, the cop, and it turned out that the person he beat up wasn't a cop, but was just a regular citizen, what do you think would have happened?
No consequences.
None.
None.
And then guys, think about this. How many times do you think that's happened? Especially before all the cell phone cameras and all the body cameras came out for the cops. How often do you think the cops kick the living crap out of African-American men just for fun? Because it's not about the protest. He let the white protester go completely. They all did, all of those cops did. Because it wasn't just Boone, it was the other cops as well. And they're like, oh good, here's a black guy. We get to have fun by giving him permanent neck damage. And by the way, of course, the second thing they do after that, normally, if it's not an undercover cop, is they then charge him with assaulting them.
Or resisting arrest.
And resisting arrest, and those are the charges they usually put on people. And then that ruins not only their physical health, but their careers. Because then from then on, every single time they go to get a job, they have to check off, I'm a felon. Okay, let alone going to prison, etc. So this is how police have been systematically abusing black men in this country for literally hundreds of years. And the former Baltimore officer who I did an interview with, that still rings in my ears, where he's white and he said, even if they put us into white areas, we had to get a quota of arrests. We didn't want to arrest white people because they could turn out to be powerful. We'd always go to the black neighborhoods, no matter where you were assigned, and just arrest people. Who cares? You got to make the quota because it's part of your job. And he said, did you think all black people in this country were lying all this time? No, we abuse them. And because it's partly because of racism, partly because they have no power. And so that's the reality of America. And the only people who deny it are the ones who kind of like that reality and don't want to get woken up to it. And they just want to say, hey, look, let the cops do what they're gonna do. We need cops and law and order. And then whenever you do law and order on somebody on their side and go, hey, maybe Trump or one of his cronies should be arrested for their corruption, instead of, no, we don't want law and order. Oh, I see. So you just wanted to be able to brutalize minorities in this country and not be discomforted by it. And that's what you hired the cops to do. So that's just the reality of America. This is one of the hundreds of cases we've covered alone, let alone all the ones that are out there that we haven't had a chance to cover, and the ones that happened in the past with no video coverage, or that happened today with no video coverage. I think it's a super fair assumption that if you hear a policeman and a victim's accounts, it is a much safer bet to say that the cop is lying and that the person that the cop assaulted is telling the truth.
I mean, at this point, how many stories have we covered where the police report completely conflicts with what the video surveillance shows?
Nearly every time.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, not every single time, but many of the stories that we've covered.
That's why I say nearly.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, look, there's the story of the guy that we did a couple of weeks ago. They hog-tied him, they beat the crap out of him, and then he died. And you see it all on video, but they didn't realize the video was going to come out. And they said that he had run into a tree and died from a car accident. It's just one lie after another, and unless the guy happens to be an undercover cop, all the cops do thin blue line, hey, he's on our gang, it doesn't matter who he killed, who he beat up, etc. We're all gonna lie on his behalf. So don't come telling me that cops are honest. The thin blue line means we lie for each other on purpose, systematically. That's what the whole point of thin blue line is.